Focus is a central challenge for many entrepreneurs. As we're pulled in different directions and have different opportunities and emergencies, the element of maintaining focus, and specifically focus of our time, is a key challenge. When we look at focus, we're going to talk about it in the context of entrepreneurial mindset. We're going to talk about its impact on the success of entrepreneurs, and we'll also assess your personal focus. Our definition in this context is going to be focus in a central point of attention or activity. And what that means is that do we have the self-discipline? Do we have the motivation? Do we have the meticulousness as entrepreneurs to identify and act on a given activity and see it to its end? Now, there are many benefits. Successful entrepreneurs can focus on that single task and see it through to completion or see it through to its next milestone. We can also be more efficient, and we can do things better and faster by giving it our full attention, by processing that information efficiently and thoroughly, and enable us to be more decisive and more thoughtful in our decisions. Now, the question of how to do that is covered by many different articles and workshops and books that are out there. This, I thought, was a nice snapshot of some tactics to keep in mind, as well as some philosophical things to consider. One element for entrepreneurs that I would suggest is to detach yourself from email, at least in part. This suggests checking once a day. For me, that would be a bit difficult, but twice, maybe 3 times a day of a morning, noon, and night is sufficient. If there is something that's urgent, you will likely receive a call. And that's the second element of being thoughtful about the use of the phone and not being afraid to use voicemail, to let messages that are important be left and return those on a periodic basis, but not necessarily feel like answering every call is critical to the success of your venture. Now, the advice of stop studying for me as an academic is something I would not suggest in whole, but I would suggest taking the time to put your ideas into action, and that incessantly reading book after book after book is not going to result in a new venture being formed. It may provide insights and inspiration, but I certainly think that there is time well spent in studying, but also time well spent in actually bringing that into practice and doing. Focusing on your success is something that takes priority, and it takes putting an emphasis on, and I would also suggest it takes putting a timeline on, and think about some goals, and think about your path towards those goals. From a time perspective, many individuals argue that our attention span is for 1 hour, perhaps 2 hours at any single point in time, and that by taking breaks and by interrupting these segments, we can be more productive and be more attentive. And being heads down and staring at a computer for more than 2 hours at the time may actually inhibit our productivity. By turning off noise, what we mean here is that we want to focus on what matters and perhaps segment or separate things that are not going to contribute to your professional success or the success of your startup. The thinking advice comes in part perhaps by meditation, by prayer, by other methods you may use to help give you some insights and some focus long term of what happens after today, what happens after this year, what really matters, and are the actions that you're taking and the elements you're investing in helpful to achieving those long-term goals. And that might take place by you, again, shutting things off, sitting quietly and just simply reflecting for a bit of time each day. Finding other startup people is tremendously valuable. Finding other people that have similar ambitions, that have similar struggles, that have similar goals and are facing similar hurdles add great value. It reduces the sense of isolation, and it also reduces the sense of hopelessness that we may have at times when we realize that other people are facing the same challenges that we are facing, and it's also inspirational to see what other people are doing as well. And lastly, the element of staying here is certainly valuable in the context of as it's related to working on your startup venture and having success with your venture, don't necessarily feel like you need to travel to other buildings or other cities or other countries to be effective or efficient. There's time lost in doing that. There's inefficiencies lost in doing that. So we want to be focused on that and recognize that simply moving around lots of places does not in and of itself create value for your venture. And there is an overhead cost of time and money associated with that that might be better spent by focusing on the startup. Self-discipline is something we'll spend a few more minutes on, and some tools and tactics that I would suggest is to have a routine, to have a to-do list, and maybe beyond a to-do list to actually schedule those on your calendar so you know how much time you're going to spend each day on various tasks. That allows you to structure your day and to have time allotments and to force you to adopt a principle of done is better than perfect. That way you are bringing things to a close and able to make progress on the next thing. I'd also encourage you to push yourself and be goal-oriented and think about what's the outcome of what you're doing and how do you measure that outcome. Also, writing your goals is very valuable. Trying to quantify what you're trying to achieve and putting a timeline to that improves your likelihood of actually getting there. And rewarding yourself as you have success or as you do reach some of these goals and milestones of taking some time, going to dinner, going on a vacation, buying an item. Is something that entrepreneurs are certainly allowed to do, and I would encourage you to do. That way you see some of that material success or you reap some of that satisfaction as you go. As you begin to grow your venture and engage with others, either as employees or joining your firm, or if there are other partners that you are engaging with, even with your investors and your customers, there's a role of leadership that you're going to have. And a primary task of leadership is that element of being able to direct your attention towards that. So being able to focus their attention and going into the elements of thinking about how things happen and what you can do to motivate them to happen and being able to draw on different neural pathways to get there. So leaders need to cultivate awareness that's inward focus. It's focus on others. It's outward focus. Inward focus and the focus on others are directly correlated to an element of emotional intelligence. That's a term we'll talk a little bit about later. Outward focus is something we want to also consider as it enables you to improve your ability to devise strategies, to innovate. So in summary, this is somewhat of a prophetic statement given that it was written over 40 years ago, but I think it certainly faces and addresses what we see now, particularly as entrepreneurs, where there is immense information, unfathomable amounts of information and data that are out there. But how do we act on it? What do we focus on? What do we give our attention to is a central question. And so we want to help not only in determining what to focus on from a business perspective, but also how to add focus and improve your focus as an individual, how to master your focus, and how to be in command of not only who you are, but where you are in your organization.